lots of information available to help us to ensure that we try our best to grow our plants and veg as healthy as possible so that they're successful every time. But of course that doesn't always work. So even though all that information is available, if we can understand the 5 essential elements of how to grow healthy plants right from seed to harvest, it's going to make us more successful in our plant growing. So in this video I'm going to show you the 5 essential elements for plant growth and how you can amend them depending upon what you're growing, vegetable wise, and all the other conditions. So if you like the video, give it a thumbs up, and if you want to subscribe to the channel for future videos on how to sow and grow fruit and veg, then please subscribe to the channel. So we plant a seed into the ground. It could be directly into the ground outside, it could be into a seed tray which will go into a greenhouse or a polyton, and eventually we hope that a number of days or weeks later that the plant is going to germinate. That's where we start to see shoots, stems and leaves. As the plant gets bigger, it starts to become more healthy to a point where we're looking to grow plants healthy enough that they can start to mature and eventually produce an abundant crop of vegetables. That's what we're trying to achieve, but as people know who grow vegetables, it's not always as straightforward as that. So what are these essential things that we can look at to try and control, to try and make our vegetable growth and plant growth more successful? Well, the first thing we need to understand is the basic principle of photosynthesis, which is the process where green plants use sunlight to make their own food. Just like human beings need food, so do plants to grow, but plants will actually produce their own food through this process. It requires sunlight, chlorophyll, water and carbon dioxide. Chlorophyll is found in green plants, usually in the leaves, and the plants also take water and nutrients from the soil and carbon dioxide from the air, and that then helps the photosynthesis process. So it starts when chlorophyll absorbs energy from sunlight, and the green plants use the light energy to change the water and carbon dioxide into oxygen and nutrients called sugars or glucose, which is what the plants will feed on. So that process tells us that there's certain essential elements that are needed to make the plant grow, and we're going to look at each of those individually now, because as a grower you can influence each of those particular elements to help make your plant growth more successful. So there's a germinated seed, and the first thing we're going to look at is water. And this sounds like an obvious one, that water is essential, but why is it essential? Because we know that, for example, a lack of water can slow down or stop the growth or even directly kill a plant. So if you don't water your plants, eventually they're going to die. And also what the water does is when you water in the plant, the roots will absorb the water and that take the water and any nutrients with it in from the ground through the stem and into the leaves. The water needs for a plant are going to be different depending upon the variety of plant that you're growing, and also the environment as well. So if it's a very hot climate, then it will clearly require more water. So you have to understand the water requirements of your plants and water them as regularly as you need. Water drainage is also important in relation to the ground's ability to hold water, and it's affected by things like slope, the type of soil, and also how much the soil is compacted. So as an example, sandy soils might require more water and a greater frequency of watering than heavier soils such as clay. Also, the time you water is also important. If you water when it's excessively sunny, then the water is going to evaporate very quickly, and it may evaporate before it gets into the soil, and therefore it won't have the impact it needs, and the plant won't get the amount of water it needs. So watering is very important. The next thing we need to understand, and what's important for the plant itself, is the amount of light or sunlight. And without the sunlight, the energy producing chlorophyll in the leaves can't be utilized, and the plant will actually remain dormant or die. Some plants require long hours of direct sunlight, while others are quite happy in shady conditions. And again, it's just knowing what the requirements of the plant are in relation to the amount of light it needs. So light is very important, and particularly with seedlings that you're putting into the ground or into plant pots. So you need to make sure there's an adequate amount of light, and if a seedling doesn't get an adequate amount of light, it becomes something called leggy, which is where the stems become really thin, and the plant is struggling because it's not getting the light, it's not getting enough food through the photosynthesis process. So light is very important to a plant's growth. The next important essential factor is temperature. Now, most of the temperature, particularly in outdoor environments, is clearly going to come from the sun. So the sun is the primary generator of heat in the atmosphere, and depending upon the plant would depend upon the temperature that's actually needed. Excess temperature can also harm a plant, so that needs to be determined based upon where you're located in the world and what type of crop you're growing. So you need to ensure the temperature is controlled. Some seedlings will require higher temperatures to germinate than others, so things like tomatoes, peppers, and some varieties of sweet corn and other vegetables may require the use of a propagator or other artificial heating just to help them germinate in certain environments. But that of course depends on what part of the world you're in. If you're in a warmer climate, you might not need that additional heating. The fourth essential element is nutrients. Now, the soil nutrients are also impacted by the pH value of the soil. So the soil pH is the measure of how acidic or alkaline it is, and without the adequate amount of nutrients in the soil, the plants will become potentially stunted and likely to become susceptible to disease. So we can add nutrients into the soil, whether that's outside or in plant pots, by adding various things such as well-rotted manure, compost, fertilizers, depending upon what type of nutrients are needed at a particular time. So feeding the soil with the right nutrients for a particular plant is also important. The final essential element that's often overlooked in relation to healthy plant growth is air. Now, air is important because it will allow oxygen into the roots of the plant, and the air will need to get to the roots through the soil. So therefore the soil aeration is really important. So if your soil is too heavily compacted, it won't have the pore space available to allow the oxygen to circulate between the pores and then get into the roots. So if you compact the soil too much, it compresses the soil and therefore reduces the amount of voids, and that can significantly limit the amount of oxygen that can get to the roots. Also, when you're planting seeds in pots or in seed trays, this is why you don't compact it too much, because you do want a certain amount of air circulation within the roots. So air is really important to allow oxygen into the plant. Without oxygen that getting into the plants will potentially be stunted or will die. So those are the 5 essential elements needed to ensure that we have healthy plants. If you were to be aware of all these things, you can then consider how you might modify or control each of these 5 elements in order to enhance the growth of your plant. And of course, ultimately what we're trying to achieve is an abundance of healthy vegetables every single time.
I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you can understand those 5 essential elements of how to grow healthy plants, it really will make a difference in your vegetable growing, because you can know how to adjust them in different circumstances, different environments and different situations. So just remember, if you like the video, give it the thumbs up, and if you want to subscribe, then please press the subscribe button. And also, if you have any comments, please leave a comment in the box below, and I will respond to it. So I'll see you all on the next video.